Panther tribe. Deep in the heart of Africa lies a country so advanced it makes Silicon Valley look like a pile of dusty calculator parts. And it all starts with the guys in the catsuits. The Panther tribe is the undisputed heavyweight champion of Wakandan politics, having sat on the throne since before humans figured out how to stop eating raw mammoth. Their whole vibe kicked off around 1 million BC when a massive space rock made of vibranium decided to use their backyard as a landing pad. A local leader named Bashenga heard a cosmic calling from the panther goddess, Bast, who pointed him toward a glowing purple weed called the heart-shaped herb. After eating it, he didn't just get a stomachache. He gained the ability to hear a pin drop in a thunderstorm and the strength to bench press a rhinoceros. This created the lineage of the Black Panther, a role that combines being a king, a high priest, and a superhero into one very stressful job description. First off, these people are the reason Wakanda is hidden behind a giant holographic privacy curtain while the rest of the world deals with traffic jams. They are the architects of the techno jungle, which honestly sounds like a bad rave, but is actually a highly sophisticated ecosystem where nature and circuits hold hands. The tribe manages the Great Mound, which is basically a giant pile of the most expensive metal in the universe, and they are incredibly stingy about sharing it. When the Skrulls tried to invade, the Panther tribe didn't just send a polite cease and desist letter, they ended the entire infiltration team and sent the remains back to space as a very clear do not disturb sign. They have spent centuries balancing the needs of various hot-headed internal factions while keeping guys like Doctor Doom from stealing their shiny toys. I personally find what these guys do to be a tough gig, because if they mess up even a little bit, the whole country might accidentally start a world war or run out of purple plants. Jabari tribe. While the Panther tribe is busy playing with holographic computers, the Jabari tribe is up in the mountains living their best low-tech life and judging everyone else for it. These guys are the ultimate hipsters of the Marvel Universe, rejecting vibranium because they think it makes people soft and spiritually bankrupt. They live in the freezing Jabari lands, where the air is thin and the fashion involves a lot of thick fur. Instead of the panther, they worship Gekri, the gorilla god, which I suppose makes for awkward dinner parties when the rest of the country is Team Cat. Historically, they have been the loyal opposition, which I guess is a fancy way of saying they spend most of the time yelling at the king from across a snowy canyon. On top of that, they actually saved the day when the previous king, Kenitra, got brainwashed by a bunch of hyena-loving weirdos known as the Hyena Clan. The Jabari use their rhythmic drumming to snap him out of it, which shows that sometimes a good beat is more effective than a laser blast. Their most famous leader, M'Baku, is consistently trying to challenge the Black Panther to a wrestling match to prove that gorilla power beats kitty cat speed. They are the rugged mountain men who remind everyone that you don't need a supercomputer to be a total powerhouse on the battlefield. Even when they are complaining about the government, they are the first ones to show up when an alien army lands, mostly so they could say I told you so while hitting things. Marub tribe. Imagine a group of people who think the Jabari are too mainstream and the Panther tribe is too loud, and you get the reclusive Marub tribe. These folks live in a mute zone called Ziera, a place so quiet you can hear your own hair grow, where they practice a very literal version of touching grass. While everyone else is building vibranium cars, the Marub decide to turn their own bodies into the hardware. They have this wild tradition of using vibranium ink for tattoos that actually connects to their nervous system and blood flow. This gives them powers that don't rely on gadgets or suits because they are basically walking, talking batteries of kinetic energy, which honestly is my favorite thing about them. One of their guys, Tosin Oduye, showed up recently and made everyone realize that the Golden City burn-in Zana might be getting a little bit stagnant and boring. They treat vibranium like a sacred partner rather than just a shiny resource to be mined and sold to the highest bidder. Because they stay out of the spotlight, most people forget they even exist until a Marub warrior shows up and starts moving faster than Aisho's speed and his clones combined. They are the ultimate introverts of Wakanda, preferring to watch the capital city struggle with its political drama while they sit in the woods and glow quietly. Especially during civil wars, they usually just close their doors and wait for the city people to finish throwing tantrums. This makes them incredibly hard to recruit for parties, but very useful if you need someone who can punch through a tank without using a single piece of machinery. They have basically achieved a level of zen that allows them to be the most dangerous people in the room while barely saying a word. Hyena clan. Every family has a group of cousins that nobody wants to invite to Thanksgiving, and in Wakanda, that role's filled by the Hyena clan. These guys aren't really a tribe in a sense of having a nice territory and a culture of weaving. They are a pack of scavengers who live for spite and chaos. The whole group started because one guy tried to eat the heart-shaped herb and failed the vibe check from the panther goddess and died. His son decided that instead of mourning, he would start a criminal empire dedicated to making the royal family's life a living nightmare. Think of them as the masters of the five-finger discount, specializing in stealing Wakandan tech and selling it on the black market or using it for their own raids. What's even wilder is their obsession with psychological warfare, like the time they used a magical altar to bring King Zinatra's dead girlfriend Nanti back to life just to mess with his head, as we discussed earlier. They don't want to rule the country in the traditional way, they just want to burn the curtains and steal the silverware while everyone's distracted. If that's not crazy enough, they have their own version of stealth tech that lets them sneak around the most secure borders on the planet like they're walking through a park. What's even worse is that they often team up with foreign villains like Doctor Doom because they have zero loyalty to the soil, only to the hustle. This makes them the ultimate pests, like a swarm of mosquitoes that also happens to have access to teleportation devices and laser rifles. Personally, they're nothing but a dark reflection of what happens when Wakandan genius is fueled by a massive chip on the shoulder and a lack of moral compass. In the end, dealing with them's like trying to catch a shadow that is also trying to pick your pocket and insult your ancestors at the same time. Desturi. When the patriotic zeal goes way too far and turns into a full-blown obsession with the good old days, you end up with the desturi. They aren't an ethnic group you're born into, but rather a political faction of grumpy traditionalists who think any outsider is a walking disaster waiting to happen. They spent years whispering in corners about how the royal family was ruining the country by making friends with the X-Men and the Avengers. Their hatred peaked when Storm became the Queen of Wakanda, mostly because they couldn't handle the idea of a foreigner wearing the crown. To save the country, they did the most ironic thing possible and teamed up with a foreign dictator named, you guessed it, Dr. Doom. This is like trying to prevent a house fire by inviting a professional arsonist over for dinner and giving them a box of matches. They allowed Doom to put nanites in the water supply and take over the nation's defense systems, which is basically the Wakandan version of giving your bank password to a Nigerian prince. This led to the Doom War, where the royal family was exiled and the country almost lost its entire vibranium supply to a guy in a metal mask. The desturi honestly thought they were the heroes of the story, right up to the point where they realized they were just puppets for a guy who lives in a castle in Europe. They are a classic example of how being too obsessed with pure customs can make you do something incredibly stupid and self-destructive. Turns out that guarding the gates against everyone usually ends with you accidentally locking yourself in a room with a hungry lion. Their legacy is a cautionary tale about why you shouldn't let your xenophobia get in the way of national security and, of course, basic common sense. Lion Cult. Long before the Wakandan unification, the Lion Cult was roaming around acting like they owned the place, and they still haven't moved on. They worship Sekhmet, the lion goddess, who is Bast's sister and apparently the one who got all the anger issues in the family. While the Panther Warriors are all about strategy and being sneaky, the Lion Cult is all about jumping into the middle of a fight and screaming at the top of their lungs. They have a massive rivalry with the ruling class that show up every few years to try and win the throne in a ritual tournament. Their fighters are incredibly brutal, using raw strength and aggression to prove that lions are at the top of the food chain for a reason. During one big tournament, their female champion absolutely wrecked the champion, beating the representatives of the other cults like they were practice dummies. However, they have a habit of making really bad decisions when they're desperate for a win. When T'Challa was in a coma, they tried to summon an ancient soul-eating predator named Morlun to take out the Panther totem once and for all. This is the spiritual equivalent of trying to fix a leaky faucet by blowing up the entire house with dynamite. They didn't care about the consequences for the rest of the world, they just wanted to see the cat lose its crown. That's why arrogance is their defining trait, leading them to believe they can control cosmic forces that usually end up eating them instead. They provide a constant reminder that being king of the jungle doesn't mean much if you keep trying to set the jungle on fire. For me personally, it's hard to take the group seriously when their entire political platform is basically just, our god is louder than your god. Crocodile Cult. If you ever find yourself wandering near the rivers of Wakanda and see a group of people who look like they haven't slept in a week and really love reptiles, you've found the Crocodile Cult. They worship Sobek, the god of the Nile and all things toothy and submerged, which makes them the masters of the watery ambush. Historically, they were one of the big players in the early days of the country, competing with the panthers and the lions for a big seat at the table. They aren't as flashy as the cats or as aggressive as the lions. They prefer to wait under the surface until the perfect moment to strike. This patient approach made them a respected, if creepy, part of the tribal landscape for a long time. However, their modern history is a bit of a disaster, mostly because they tried to play with the same fire as the lion cult. They were the ones who actually succeeded in bringing Moreland back to life, thinking they could use him as a hired hitman to take out the Black Panther. Instead of getting a loyal assassin, they got a hungry vampire who immediately looked at them and saw a buffet line. Moreland wiped out their entire gathering in minutes, turning the cult's grand resurrection ceremony into a very one-sided dinner party. This pretty much ended their run as a major political force, as it's hard to maintain a cult when your entire leadership has been turned into a snack. Now, they are mostly a footnote in history, a warning to everyone that the enemy of my enemy is often just an even bigger problem. Ibis cult. Finally, we have the Ibis cult, who are basically the librarians and professors of Wakanda. Located in the chilly northern city of Bernin T'Chaka, they worship Thoth, the god of wisdom and writing, which means they spend more time with scrolls than with spears. Unlike every other group on this list, they have zero interest in stealing the throne or starting a civil war. They just want to be left alone to write things down, keep the moon cycles in check, and think very deep thoughts. Honestly, they're literally me, so this tribe is my personal favorite. They're so quiet and out of the way that King T'Challa, a man who knows literally everything about this country, didn't even meet one of them until he was an adult. This is like living in a house for 20 years and suddenly finding a very smart guy living in a secret room behind your bookshelf. They represent the intellectual side of Wakanda that doesn't get involved in the flashy superhero battles or the vibranium trade. While the capital city's busy dealing with alien invasions and high-tech coups, the Ibis cult is probably just debating the grammar of an ancient text. They're the reason Wakanda has such a deep sense of history and philosophy, providing a balance to the warrior culture that dominates the rest of the nation. They don't need fancy energy daggers or power suits when they have the power of extreme literacy and moon magic on their side. Even in a country filled with flying cars and super soldiers, someone still needs to make sure the records are kept and the moon is being watched. They're the ultimate no-drama tribe, which makes them the most sane people in the country, where your king might occasionally turn into a ghost or go to space. It's a nice change of pace to see a group whose biggest contribution to society is making sure people use the right "your" in your ancient manuscripts. At the end of the day, they are basically the only people in Wakanda who aren't trying to punch someone, which probably makes them the most suspicious group of all. That's it for this one. If you liked the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and ring the bell so you never miss a drop. Craving more stories from comics, movies, and beyond? Check out this video right here. Cheers and see you in the next one.